After my Spectacular Spider-Man Season 3 adaptation, I asked you guys at the end of the video if you would like to see Season 4. A lot of you said yes, so here I am today bringing you the Spectacular Spider-Man Season 4. Bear in mind that a lot of the storylines that were confirmed for Season 3, I actually did use in Season 3. So Season 4 will be very, very outlandish in what I would have done if I was in control of the show in Season 4. And obviously I'm going to reference things from the first two seasons, as well as stuff that I did in Season 3, and I'm going to carry over the storylines to make it make sense. I'm also going to add in some storylines that I think would fit perfectly for Season 4. So with that being said, let's get straight into the Spectacular Spider-Man Season 4. Enjoy. Episode 1 I have dubbed Integrity. So basically in this episode, Peter is going to be dealing with Harry's death. So if you remember at the end of Season 3 I said that Harry died, and basically he will lose all hope. It'll be like kind of a Spider-Man No More type of story, where he's had to kill his best friend, and he's kind of in the dumps right now. But Gwen will actually remind him that being Spider-Man is a good thing, and he has to carry on being Spider-Man because that's what the city needs Spider-Man basically. And this is going to be quite a gritty episode, and quite a lot of the season is very, very gritty of what I've actually jotted down. If you guys thought Season 3 was gritty, Season 4 is, oh my god, just wait and see. So pretty much Gwen will remind him. These two are actually dating at this point. If I will remind you guys, remember that Gwen and Peter are actually dating at this point, and that's one of the reasons why Harry became the Goblin and did in fact die, and Peter had to kill him. So Peter and Gwen continue as interns at ESU under Miles Warren. So if you remember in Season 1 and 2, Gwen especially, Peter kind of got kicked out, but Gwen was an intern at ESU under Dr. Connors, and now because Miles Warren owns the lab, them two are going to continue as interns there, and that ties into a story in this season. You just have to wait. So episode 2 I've titled Kraven's Last Hunt Part 1. Now I must say that obviously the Kraven's Last Hunt is very, very graphic, and because this is a TV show and kids may be watching it, you can't have Kraven kill himself like he actually does in the comics. So this will be a variation of the story. I've called it Kraven's Last Hunt just because the story is very, very familiar to it and takes very big plot points from the actual story from the comics, but it won't be directly from the comics. I'm going to take out the whole killing himself part. That bit's not going to be in this storyline. So Kraven will escape jail with the help of his wife. Now the reason I put this in here is because obviously Calypso is his wife, and it's just a way to get Kraven out of jail, because I mean he's in jail at this point. He becomes obsessed with Spider-Man once again, because obviously he's got a motive to want to kill Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's put him away twice. He defeats him and buries him alive, just like in the comics. He defeats him, he'll probably put him unconscious, so he won't kill him, and he'll bury him alive. And at this point, obviously, we know Kraven is going to go on a hunt, well, hunt in quotation marks, but he's going to try and be better than Spider-Man. So episode 3 rolls around, and it's called Kraven's Last Hunt Part 2, obviously. Kraven dresses up as Spider-Man and stops crime. And Kraven actually does mess up as Spider-Man, and this is where basically the story takes a different turn than it does in the comics. So basically Kraven messes up as Spider-Man, but is doing a better job, but messes up once and is destroying Spider-Man's reputation, like just really bad. His reputation is becoming really bad. Kraven is messing up his reputation, and he tries to fix it by stopping more crime, trying to be better than Spider-Man, proving that he's the better Spider-Man. And then Spider-Man tries to stop him because he knows that Kraven is probably going to mess up his reputation even more. Kraven becomes infuriated, and they battle, and basically Kraven is then put away forever. He goes back to prison, and that is basically Kraven's Last Hunt, because this is the last time we're going to ever see Kraven, so technically the title does kind of fit the story, but yeah, that's basically Kraven's Last Hunt. Episode 4 rolls around, and I've titled this Return of Black Cat. This is going to be a one-episode storyline, so this is going to be a one-episode arc. Just like in Season 3, we had like 2 one-episode arcs that didn't really tie into the whole season. This is going to be one of them in this season. It's going to be called Return of Black Cat. And because obviously after Season 3, Season 4's took a very different tone and a very different vibe, and you'll definitely see that through the next storyline that I've got coming up. But basically this episode will basically just be a nod back to the first 2 seasons where it was more lighthearted. And basically Doc Ock in this episode is going to hatch a plan to finally destroy Spider-Man. So he wants him out the picture. He's still got hope that he can still be the big man of crime, which has been pretty much the main villain of pretty much all the seasons in Spectacular Spider-Man. Apart from the Green Goblin, the big man of crime has been the big talking point, He hosts an event that will sell some kind of tech like the one that Kingsley bet on in Season 2, that tech that Oscorp actually created. He knew that Spider-Man would come along for it and trying to stop him, but guess what? So did Black Cat. Black Cat is going to try and steal it. Spider-Man is actually, he falls into the trap, and Black Cat is actually caught in the crossfire as well. So basically, Spider-Man and Black Cat are forced to settle their differences, if you remember at the end of Season 2, and work together to escape from Doc Ock. So basically, they are going to have to settle their differences, and because they actually kind of don't like each other, well, Black Cat doesn't really like Spider-Man, they have to settle their differences to escape Doc Ock, and that's exactly what they do. So basically, they defeat Doc Ock, and Doc Ock goes to prison once and for all, and Black Cat and Spider-Man go their separate ways. I just thought it's a really cool way to incorporate Black Cat and just show that she's still out there. Then episode 5 rolls around. You guys may love it or you hate it. I've titled it The Clone Saga Part 1. So this is where this story takes a turn for the very dark, and it's going to get very, very gritty out from here. So basically, Miles Warren has found a way to perfect the cloning human process. So he can clone a human at will. All he needs is just a strand of DNA. So he wants to test it out on Spider-Man, because Spider-Man, he's basically a genetically modified human, and imagine having multiple Spider-Men. That would be so cool. So Miles Warren wants to test it on Spider-Man. So basically, this gives him the motivation to become the Jackal, which is actually a comic book villain. If you guys don't know who he is, he's basically like a C-grade villain. Not many people know who he is, unless you've actually read the original Clone Saga comics. Basically, the Jackal and Spider-Man fight, and basically the Jackal escapes with a piece of Spidey's costume that got ripped off, so DNA. So then obviously he creates the clone. Episode 6 rolls around, and that's called The Clone Saga Part 2. Miles clones obviously Spider-Man and finds out that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And the reason this is important is because obviously remember, Peter and Gwen are still interns at ESU, where Miles Warren runs the lab, ESU. So basically, now Miles Warren knows that his intern is Spider-Man. Miles becomes obsessed with Spider-Man, knowing that it's one of his interns. He asks for a one-on-one conversation with Peter Parker, and then he reveals to Peter that he is the Jackal, and the Jackal and Spider-Man actually do fight. The Jackal escapes, however, and the clone escapes as well, but still has Peter's memories. Episode 7 rolls around, and that's called The Clone Saga Part 3. Spider-Man and the Jackal have their final battle, in which the Jackal is killed when ESU actually does explode. The clone goes into hiding, knowing that he shouldn't interfere with the real Peter Parker's life. The clone becomes Ben Reilly, and Ben, obviously from Uncle Ben, and Riley from Aunt May's maiden name. That's how Ben Reilly's name actually came to be, guys, if you didn't know that. And as far as Peter knows, the clone of him died in the explosion along with the lab. Then episode 8 rolls around, and this is titled Back from the Dead. Norman Osborn does return. If you guys do remember at the end of Season 2, Norman Osborn actually was alive, and this time he actually returns after taking a little break and regathering his thoughts as a different identity. He actually does return to New York, and he covers up his death, saying that the Goblin actually did keep him captive, and he only just returned. But remember, the city doesn't actually know who the Green Goblin is. The only people that knew Norman was the Goblin were Harry and Peter Parker, and Harry is dead. So obviously Spidey, as he does, confronts Norman. Norman tells Spider-Man that he knows that he is Peter Parker. So basically this is going to be a big problem for Spider-Man. Norman has been gathering his thoughts, and he's actually realised and found out with a lot of evidence that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And Norman is smart about this. He tells Spider-Man that he is Peter Parker, and just goes over all the Oscorp buy and his whole origin story pretty much in this episode. And this sets up a brand new rivalry between Norman Osborn and Spider-Man, and the only reason Norman actually did return to New York was to kill Spider-Man. He actually he wants to kill him. There's no other motive. Norman just wants to kill Spider-Man. So Peter doesn't have any evidence to expose Norman as the Goblin, however, so that leaves Peter in a tough situation. He just has to wait for Norman to move first. So Norman can literally sit back for years on end and not do anything, and Peter can't expose him as the Goblin. So Peter has to wait for the Goblin to make his move first, which in the long run has very, very big effects on Peter, playing mind games with him and so on and so forth. So episode 9 rolls around. This is titled Maximum Carnage. So basically, Cletus Kasady is actually thought to have had rid of the symbiote. And also Peter is on high alert because of Norman. Just want to put that out there again. So basically the symbiote bonded with him on a cellular level. So Cletus becomes Carnage and actually does break out of prison. So pretty much Carnage has been waiting for the perfect opportunity, and Cletus realizes that, you know, the symbiote actually did bond with him on a cellular level, so he doesn't actually need the real symbiote, and he becomes Carnage and breaks out of prison. Spider-Man fights Carnage, and basically Ben Reilly at this point realizes that Spider-Man needs help, because remember in the War of the Symbiote storyline last season, in season 3, if you do remember, Spider-Man had to team up with Venom to take down Carnage, and Spider-Man can't defeat him on his own. So basically Ben Reilly realizes that Spider-Man needs his help, so dawns his own version of Spider-Man, the Scarlet Spider. So Peter finds out that the clone is alive, and Spider-Man and the Scarlet Spider take down Carnage. The Carnage symbiote is relieved of Kasady, but then bonds to Ben Reilly, the clone, to create Spider-Carnage. Now, obviously, in the comics, Ben Reilly, at this point when Spider-Carnage comes about, is basically the real Spider-Man. He isn't, you know, he isn't Scarlet Spider. He is the real Spider-Man, and Peter Parker isn't being Spider-Man anymore. Instead, Peter Parker is still being Spider-Man, but Ben Reilly actually does become Spider-Carnage. And yeah, so basically in episode 10, which I have dubbed Spider-Carnage, Peter fights Spider-Carnage, obviously. Peter realizes that he can't beat a Spider-Man with the Carnage symbiote, which is worse than a serial killer with the Carnage symbiote, surprisingly enough. So he gets through to Ben, reminding him of his past life, of Peter Parker, because obviously Ben Reilly still has the memories of Peter Parker. So Peter reminds Ben of Uncle Ben, of Aunt May, of Gwen, of everyone in his life, of Harry, you know, and then Ben actually does break through, just like we saw in the 90s cartoon series. If you guys do remember the episode with Spider-Carnage in, Ben breaks free of the symbiote, but not fully. The symbiote still is on him. He can't get rid of it, but Ben has his own mind. Ben can think clearly without the symbiote controlling him, and he knows that if he waits longer that the symbiote will take control again and basically just destroy the city. So basically Ben sacrifices himself to save New York from Spider-Carnage, killing Ben Reilly. So the clone of Peter Parker is now dead, and also the Carnage symbiote, just like the Venom symbiote in the last season, the Carnage symbiote is now dead, and that kills Ben Reilly, and Ben Reilly is now dead. The clone of Peter Parker is no more. Then we go into episode 11, which I have dubbed Juggernaut. So basically, this is back to the Norman storyline. Norman knows Peter will be on high alert, so he creates the Juggernaut to keep him busy whilst he conducts his plan to rid of Spider-Man forever. Spider-Man fights the Juggernaut, and obviously Spider-Man will come out on top, but at this point he is completely distracted from Norman Osborn, and Norman Osborn's just been sitting back in his chair waiting for the right moment. Then we go into episode 12, which I've titled The Wheel of Fortune, and basically the Green Goblin will return once again as Norman Osborn and messes with Peter's head, playing mind games with him and just doing all that kind of stuff, saying that he's going to kill someone in his life, he's going to kill him, and then the Goblin does in fact kidnap Gwen Stacy and takes her to the George Washington Bridge. And then you all know what's coming next. The Green Goblin, Norman Osborn, kills Gwen Stacy, and this is the night of the Gwen Stacy death storyline. And basically Norman Osborn kills Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man is enraged. And that leads us straight to the final episode of season 4, which I have dubbed The Last Stand, and this is a storyline where it ends off with episode 13, and it's basically just Peter Parker versus Norman Osborn. It basically picks up straight away where the last episode left off. Just, you know, the last episode completely cuts off, and then episode 13 rolls around, and it's just Peter Parker absolutely infuriated with Norman Osborn. And in this episode, Peter Parker will kill Norman Osborn for good. He makes sure he's dead. Pretty much everyone else that has died in the Spectacular Spider-Man show has either sacrificed themselves or they've accidentally died. This time, Peter Parker will kill Norman Osborn as Spider-Man. And that's how the season ends. Peter Parker versus Norman Osborn in episode 13, The Last Stand. Norman Osborn is finally dead, but Peter Parker is responsible for his death for killing Gwen Stacy. So that's how you do Spectacular Spider-Man Season 4. Hopefully you've all enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to hit the like button, subscribe if you want to, hit the bell notification button next to the subscribe button to not miss any more content. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace. So a little bit of a quick note at the end here. If you guys didn't know, the show writers and Sony were originally planning for 5 seasons of the Spectacular Spider-Man. This was Season 4. If you guys want to see Season 5, make sure to like this video, make sure you're subscribed, and comment down below Season 5 in all caps with exclamation marks, or whatever. Just something indicating to me that you want to see Season 5. If you want me to do Season 5... make sure to make it clear, because the support from the last one and telling me to do Season 4 was immense. If you want me to do Season 5, make sure to comment down below. That's all for now. I'll see you guys in the next one.